was the summer of 1983, the kind of Midwest summer that felt endless, when the sun baked the cornfields until they shimmered like gold, and the nights were so warm you could still smell the sun in the air long after it set. Out past Maple Hollow, Iowa, the Henderson farmhouse stood alone at the end of a long, twisting dirt road. It was the kind of place that looked peaceful from a distance: red barn, white siding, an old oak tree leaning over the porch, but up close, it carried the weight of years. The Henderson brothers had grown up there, raised by a father who believed hard work and silence could fix anything. After he passed, they stayed: Ely, the oldest, quiet and steady; Mark, the dreamer with faraway eyes; Jonah, the muscle of the family, always in his worn-out baseball cap; and Samuel, just 19, still half a boy with restless hands and a head full of strange ideas. Their life followed the rhythm of the fields. Sunrise meant work, sunset meant supper. The brothers were known for that red tractor, old, dependable, loud enough to rattle windows a mile away. When the wind was right, folks in town would say, "The Henderson boys are out early again." But something shifted that summer. The tractor wasn't the only thing humming in those fields anymore. The neighbors noticed first. The lights in the barn started burning later than usual, sometimes till dawn. The brothers stopped stopping by the diner for coffee, and when they did, they looked tired, distracted, like men carrying something heavy they couldn't talk about. The easy laughter that once filled their house was gone. Even Samuel, who used to sit out on the porch at night sketching strange symbols in the dirt, stopped coming outside. By mid-July, rumors had started spreading through Maple Hollow. A mailman swore he heard machinery running after midnight. A farmhand passing by said he saw flickers of light under the soil, glowing like fireflies where no fireflies should be. The sheriff brushed it off as gossip, but the older folks, the ones who remembered the land before the Hendersons, didn't. They said the fields had a hum of their own that year, something deep, mechanical, and alive. No one could explain it, but everyone could feel it. The wind didn't sound the same, the air felt charged, and the silence between crickets grew longer each night, as if the land itself was listening. The sky over Maple Hollow burned orange that evening, the kind of color that makes you feel like something is about to happen. The air was thick, unmoving, heavy with that electric charge that always comes before a storm. Inside the Henderson farmhouse, supper was on the table: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, sweet tea, and the smell of rain in the distance. The brothers sat together like always, but the silence between them was louder than the thunder rolling in from the north. Eli, steady as ever, glanced out the window and said they should secure the barn before the wind came through. But Samuel wasn't listening. His fork hovered in midair, eyes fixed on the darkening field outside. He said he saw someone, or something, moving between the rows of corn. A tall figure, almost human, gliding slowly through the stalks. Jonah laughed it off, teasing him for jumping at shadows, but Mark didn't laugh. He'd been hearing strange noises too, low hums that rose and fell like breathing whenever the wind died. By the time the first drops of rain hit the tin roof, the world outside had turned black. The wind began to howl, dragging the corn into wild waves that looked alive in the flashes of lightning. The brothers locked the doors, lit a single lantern, and huddled in the kitchen as the power flickered, then died completely. The sound of rain on the roof was deafening, steady, relentless, and the windows rattled with each gust. Eli tried to keep calm, saying it was just another summer storm, but every time thunder shook the house, they all flinched like they were waiting for something worse. Then, through the chaos, came a sound that didn't belong, faint at first, barely audible: the slow cough of an engine trying to turn over. Jonah froze mid-sentence. Eli's face went pale. The red tractor was in the barn, locked up tight, the keys sitting right there on the counter beside the lamp. Yet the sound grew louder, more insistent, the rhythm unmistakable. When the engine finally caught, its deep growl rolled through the storm, cutting through the thunder like something alive. The brothers looked at each other, fear plain in their eyes. "Maybe the wind tripped the ignition," Jonah muttered, but his voice cracked halfway through. Eli grabbed a flashlight, his hands shaking just enough to make the beam dance on the walls. They stepped into their boots, their shadows long and unsteady under the lantern light. Rain slammed against their faces as they pushed open the front door and ran toward the barn. The storm roared around them. Flashes of white light, the metallic scent of ozone, mud sucking at their boots. And then, just for a second, the tractor's headlights flickered. 2 perfect circles in the darkness, before vanishing again. When they reached the barn and yanked the doors open, the engine was dead. The only sound was the storm. But in the slush-covered dirt, 4 sets of muddy footprints led straight out from the tractor and back toward the house. When Sheriff Harold Dalton got the call that the Henderson brothers hadn't been seen in 2 days, he figured it was nothing serious. The Hendersons were known to keep to themselves, especially during harvest season. Still, something about the tone in Deputy Miller's voice that morning made him drive out there personally. The storm had passed, leaving the fields slick and glistening beneath a pale sun. But as Dalton turned down the dirt road toward the property, the air grew unnaturally still. No birds, no insects. Just the hum of his cruiser's tires crunching over wet gravel. When he stepped out, the quiet was so complete it made his ears ring. The farmhouse stood there at the end of the lane, its roof dripping with rainwater, its front door slowly rocking back and forth in the wind. The sheriff called out, his voice echoing across the open field, but there was no answer. Inside, the house felt frozen in time. Breakfast plates still sat on the kitchen table, half-eaten chicken, cold coffee, a puddle of syrup spreading across the wood. One chair had been knocked over, but otherwise nothing seemed broken or disturbed. No signs of struggle, no sign of life. It was as if the brothers had simply vanished in the middle of a meal. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and diesel fuel, an odor that had no business being inside a house. Dalton's flashlight beam caught the old radio on the counter, still plugged in, still humming with static, its knob turned halfway like someone had been trying to tune it. Upstairs, beds were unmade, lamps left on, and Samuel's drawings, those strange symbols he used to carve in the dirt, were scattered across the floorboards. Each one showed the same thing, circles drawn in layers, like ripples spreading from a single point. The sheriff gathered a few pages, folded them, and slipped them into his jacket, though he couldn't say why. When he stepped out toward the barn, a cold wind rolled off the fields, carrying with it the faint smell of gasoline. The storm had torn part of the barn's roof away, and the morning light spilled through the gap like a spotlight, landing directly on the red tractor. Dalton had seen that machine 100 times before. Always spotless, always well kept. But now, its hood was streaked with rainwater, the front tires sunk deep into the mud as if it had tried to drive forward and gotten stuck. When he touched the hood, it was still warm. The key was still in the ignition, twisted so hard it was bent. That's when he noticed the scratches. 3 long gouges carved deep into the wooden beams, running parallel from top to bottom. They weren't random, they looked deliberate, forceful, like something with claws had tried to dig its way out. He snapped a photo with his Polaroid, and for just a split second, as the flash burst in the darkness, he thought he saw movement in the reflection, something tall and pale standing behind him. But when the light faded, the barn was empty. Only the muddy footprints leading out the back door remained, bare and human, disappearing into the cornfields swaying in the breeze. 3 days after the sheriff's visit, a local farmhand named Riley Cooper showed up at the station, his clothes still damp from the morning dew and his hands trembling. He said he'd found something out near the Henderson property, something he didn't want to keep in his house another night. Wrapped in a plastic feed bag caked with mud was an old VHS tape. The label had peeled away, but faint black markers still spelled out one word, Shome. Sheriff Dalton didn't have a VCR in the station anymore. Nobody did. So he brought the tape home, dug out his old player from the attic, and sat down in his living room with a notepad and a cup of black coffee. The screen flickered to life with static, lines rolling up and down, and then a shaky image of the Henderson kitchen appeared. The time stamp read July 14, 1983, 11:47 p.m., the same night as the storm. At first, it was just the brothers laughing, drinking, their faces half lit by the lantern on the table. But as the minutes rolled by, the mood shifted. Eli stood up, walked to the window, and whispered something to Mark, too low to hear. The others followed his gaze. The camera tilted toward the glass, and through the reflection, a faint blue glow could be seen pulsing from the barn. Dalton leaned forward, his pulse quickening. The footage cut to black for a moment, then came back, this time in the barn. The camera shook violently, as if someone was running. The tractor's engine roared, headlights bursting through the dark. The lens caught brief flashes of faces, Jonna shouting something, Samuel holding up his hand, his eyes wide with terror. The next frame was chaos. The camera dropped to the ground, spinning sideways, showing the lower half of the barn door trembling on its hinges. Shadows moved past in quick bursts, tall, narrow, flickering shapes that didn't move like people. The hum started then, low, metallic, almost like machinery, and the sound grew so loud that it made the audio crackle and distort. The screen turned white for several seconds before cutting back to the inside of the house. The brothers were gone. Only the lantern remained, burning low on the table, casting long, trembling shadows on the walls. Then came the part Dalton couldn't explain. The camera, still recording, slowly turned by itself, panning across the empty kitchen. There were no footsteps, no voices, no sound at all. Just the faint static hiss. Then the image began to distort. The walls seemed to breathe, the lights flickered, and a dark shape started forming near the door. It wasn't human. It was too tall, too still, with joints that bent the wrong way, its head tilting unnaturally toward the lens. As it came closer, the sound of that mechanical hum returned, vibrating so low it made the floor shake. The tape ended abruptly, freezing on the creature's outline before the screen turned to static. Sheriff Dalton just sat there, staring at the dead screen, the coffee cold in his hand. He rewound it once, played it again, and swore he saw movement in the reflection of the TV. Something tall, faintly glowing blue, standing just behind him in the darkened window. The official search began at sunrise 2 days after the tape was discovered. Sheriff Dalton, along with 12 deputies, a K-9 unit, and nearly 30 local volunteers, combed through the Henderson property from end to end. The early morning fog hung low over the cornfields, thick enough to blur the horizon, making it impossible to tell where the land ended and the sky began. The searchers moved in tight lines, calling out names that dissolved into the mist. "Eli, Jonah! Mark! Samuel!" Each echo returning softer, more hollow than before. From a distance, the old farmhouse looked peaceful again, but up close, the earth told a different story. Deep ruts cut through the soil where the tractor had been, surrounded by footprints that twisted and overlapped, some human, others too large, too long. The dogs picked up a scent near the barn but refused to move past it, their fur bristling, low growls rumbling in their throats. Dalton tried to coax them forward, but the moment they crossed the threshold, they yelped and bolted back toward the trucks, tails tucked tight. As the day went on, the team spread outward, pushing into the cornfields where the mud thickened and the rows seemed to close in around them. It was like walking through a maze that didn't want to be solved. Several volunteers reported hearing the low hum, faint but constant, rising from beneath the ground. One of the deputies said it felt like standing on top of a buried generator, though there were no power lines anywhere near the property. Around noon, the fog finally began to lift, and that's when they found it, a large circular depression in the field, about 30 feet wide, perfectly symmetrical, the soil inside darker than the rest. No burn marks. No tracks leading in or out. Just that same geometric precision found in Samuel's drawings. Dalton knelt beside it, ran his hand over the soil, and felt the faintest vibration, a steady, pulsing rhythm like a heartbeat. His stomach turned cold. He ordered everyone to step back and mark the area for further inspection, but the ground kept trembling beneath their feet. By dusk, the team was exhausted. The fields seemed endless, the air thick with that metallic tang again. They regrouped near the barn, planning to pack up before dark, when one of the younger deputies, Hayes, came running from the far side of the property, shouting that he'd found something near the tree line. Everyone followed. There, half buried in the mud, was a piece of the Henderson's red tractor. The front emblem, clean as if freshly polished, even though it had been raining for days. A few feet away, they found what looked like torn fabric. Bits of flannel denim, something like skin caught between them. Dalton picked it up with his glove, holding it under the beam of his flashlight. That's when he saw it, carved into the bark of a nearby oak tree. The same circle symbol from Samuel's sketches, only this one was still wet, as though freshly burned into the wood. The sheriff turned toward the field. And for just a moment, under the dying light of the sun, the corn seemed to ripple outward, as if something enormous had just slipped beneath the earth. That night, long after the search teams left and the property was sealed off, Sheriff Dalton returned alone. He couldn't sleep. The images from that tape kept replaying in his mind, the sound of that mechanical hum still echoing in his ears. The fields were quiet now, the fog rolling low again, swallowing the world in gray. He walked out to where the circular mark had been found earlier, the one that pulsed beneath the soil. But when he reached it, the ground was smooth, untouched, as if it had never been disturbed. No footprints, no tractor tracks, no trace of the brothers. Just the wind whispering through the corn. He knelt, pressed his palm to the earth, and for a split second it was warm. The sheriff never reported what happened next. Only that his patrol car was found the next morning parked outside the Henderson farmhouse, engine still running, driver's door open. The radio was on, broadcasting nothing but static, though some claimed they could hear faint voices hidden in the noise. 4 of them, calling each other's names between the distortion. The farmhouse was later condemned, and the land sold off, but no one ever stayed long. The tractors wouldn't start, the animals refused to graze, and at night, neighbors said they could see faint blue light flickering in the distance, right where the old barn used to stand. Even now, if you drive past Maple Hollow on a humid summer night, you can still hear it. That low, steady hum rolling across the fields, like the earth itself is remembering something it was never meant to. Some say it's just the wind through the corn. Others swear it's the sound of an engine turning over, the red tractor still running, somewhere beneath the soil. And if you listen long enough, you might just hear a voice whisper your name through the static. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.